get this entire presentation. But I'm happy to send these slides to you. You can just in the chat put your email address, and I'll happily send that to you. Any other questions about this so far? Okay, we'll go back to the slides then. Okay, so we walked through the parts of the form. The 4 parts are your agent, your healthcare wishes, how to revoke or change your directive, and then making this legal. And I want everybody to know you do not need to go to an attorney to do this. You can do it today. And I would encourage you to do it today. It's a really easy and simple thing to do. Just follow through the form and you'll be able to do that, get it done legally, and then you have this for the rest of your life. And it's a really, really smart thing to do. It's simple, easy to use. You don't need an attorney, but if capacity is questionable, be sure to see an attorney. It's really worth it if anyone is going to go to war over whether you have capacity or you don't have capacity. Contacting an attorney who can walk you through the test for capacity is really a good thing, because then it's much cleaner, and people who are going to argue that you lacked capacity will have no tool in their toolbox to be able to argue that. In Utah, people are presumed to have capacity to make their own healthcare decisions. And as long as the person has capacity, medical professionals and family should defer to that person. So in other words, if you're 87 years old, you're in the hospital, you may even be very, very sick, but the presumption is that you have capacity to make your own decisions. Kids and grandkids shouldn't be in the room pushing around the doctors. It should be the person themselves. We always give dignity to the person themselves, unless that person really does not have capacity to make those decisions. And you can change your mind over and over again. And that's the way it should be. I'll share a personal story. My dad, who passed away about 4 years ago, he was convinced that the minute that his kidneys stopped working, he was not going to go on dialysis. He had told all of us that. He had said, this is the end for me. As soon as my kidneys start working and the doctors say I need to go on dialysis, I'm not going to do it, and I'll be dead in a matter of days after that. And that's how I want to live. And we respected that, because he absolutely had the capacity to make that decision. Well, when the time came when his doctor said, you no longer have enough kidney capacity and you are going to need to go on dialysis, he made the decision that he was going to change his mind, and he wanted to go on dialysis. And so, again, we respected that, and we backed off and said, listen, if that's what you want to do, then that's your choice, and you can change your mind over and over again. So the question of capacity often comes up in these conversations. And if it does, the qualified practitioner, and a qualified practitioner in the state of Utah includes advanced practice nurses and above, basically. They have to personally examine the patient. They have to record the findings in writing, and then communicate those findings to the family, to the person, to the medical team. So determining capacity is a relatively time-consuming process when capacity is questioned. So just be aware of that. And it's important to understand that advanced healthcare directives don't come to life until 2 practitioners have determined in writing that the person is no longer able to make their own medical decisions. So the patient can absolutely challenge the incapacity finding. And then if that is the case, then the person has to go to court to decide whether or not the practitioners are right, or whether the person who believes they have capacity is correct. So I'm going to now let me pause there for a second, and let anybody ask any questions they want to about capacity, about the process of filling out that form and how that can go. So any questions along those lines? Okay, now I'm going to talk about something that is not an advance directive. So that may seem confusing to you, because here we are talking about advanced care planning, but what I'm going to talk about next is not an advance directive. It's actually a standing physician's order, and it's called a POLST, P-O-L-S-T, which stands for a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. This is, again, not an advance directive, a current standing order. It's really useful in a situation like where a person may be transferred from their home to a hospital, or if they're already in a facility like a long-term care facility and their health is failing, and they may be transferred to a hospital. And the reason that this form is so valuable, if you remember, the advanced healthcare directives only come to life when two physicians have certified in writing that the person can no longer make their own decisions and have then communicated that back. Well, that leaves a pretty big gap for somebody who, let's say they're home and they call the ambulance. The ambulance and its staff have an obligation to get you to the hospital alive. That's Utah law. They're going to do everything in their power to get you to the hospital alive. And that may include some things that you wouldn't have wanted, like a tube to help you breathe, or IVs that have been placed in your arms, or resuscitation efforts. So all of those steps that the ambulance will take by law are going to happen unless you've got a physician's order telling those emergency services people what to do. So that's where a POLST comes into play. And then once you're in the hospital, physicians can come in and then certify that you can no longer make your decisions, and then your healthcare power of attorney and your living will govern the decisions. But during the time that emergency services are on scene, they are not going to do anything that is in your advanced care directive. They're only going to do something directed by a physician telling them what to do. So this is why a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment is an extremely valuable thing. Utah has a model form. It's very easy and straightforward. You get this from your doctor. It's not something that you can fill out on your own. So you would work with your physician to be able to fill that out. So again, the significant advantage of the POLST, it goes into effect as soon as it's completed, the second it's completed. And it will be honored by EMS and all other healthcare practitioners if they know about it and if they can find it. So be sure to put the form in an easy to identify place, such as on the fridge or behind the front door, up above the headboard, on the medical chart. So the emergency services folks are trained to look for a POLST in those places, either on the fridge, above your headboard, right there behind the front door, on your medical chart. That's where physician or the emergency services folks are going to be looking to see if you've got a POLST. So be sure it's in an easy to find place. Those are all of the things that I wanted to share, and so I'm happy now to open it up to questions. So if you have questions about advanced healthcare planning, then now is the time to share those questions. So Jen, did we have anything come in through the chat?
No, not just yet. And anybody, if you press the little chat button at the bottom of your screen and click on that, that'll open up the chat bar if you want to answer or ask any questions there.
Did you get our request, our emails?
Yeah, I've got Jennifer's request and I've got Megan's request, and I'll be happy to send those slides to you.
And do we have your contact information? Because I have a very specific question on those who want to die by suicide.
Okay. Yeah, just so you know, I am an attorney, but I am not practicing and I cannot represent anyone or give personalized information. So if you have a question that is that specific, you may need to consult an attorney, but I'm happy to take the question and let you know if it's something I can answer or something I can't answer. So Susan Swap, I see that you're requesting the slides, but you would need to put your email address in there so that I can give them to you.
Can you type your contact in the chat? I have to hop off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and
So
we also have a question that came into the chat. So if someone in an assisted living just puts a little note on their fridge or door that just says DNR, is that honorable by EMS or do they need to post the whole form?
yeah, unfortunately, so Utah's law on this has been confusing over the years. There used to be what was called a DNR, or a do not resuscitate. You would go and get a form from the health department that included a bracelet that would actually go on your arm. It's been about 16 years ago now, they stopped doing that, and the pulse became the form that is correct. So just putting DNR on is not enough anymore. So even if you had one of those old bracelets, I can't imagine anybody still has one. Or if you just wanted, somebody to say, I'm DNR, you can't do that. You need to get a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. The good news is that a facility, like an assisted living facility, the law now says that when you are admitted to an assisted living facility or admitted to a skilled nursing facility, that facility is required to ask if you have advanced healthcare directives and if you would like a pulse. And they'll use their physicians or their medical professionals to help you get that pulse so that you've got some kind of a standing order to help you in that situation. So a DNR is not honored by EMS, but it's very simple and straightforward to get a pulse. And in fact, the pulse should be the very first form in all medical records, so that if there is an emergency, then the EMS should be able to look right at that packet of forms and be able to honor that pulse form. Great question.
Now, if somebody, if your family member or your loved one is relying on somebody else to help them make these decisions and you feel that they're perhaps being coerced or it's not in their best interest, is there anything that you can do at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really important piece of the puzzle. If anyone believes that they are being coerced, especially in making that determination of like who the healthcare agent would be, it would be really difficult to coerce a doctor into filling out a pulse. But I've seen efforts along those lines. And most doctors are well trained enough that if the person for whom they're filling out the pulse lacks capacity, then they will do what they need to go through the legal process to either have that pulse filled out by a guardian or go through the process of determining that the person can't make their own medical decisions at that point. And then the healthcare agent, once the agent is in place, can help fill out that pulse form. But if there's any questions as to capacity, undue influence, a new person in the person's life who suddenly is coming in and trying to shift around wills and powers of attorney and things like that, then absolutely getting in touch with a good quality elder law attorney who can walk this process through, and ensuring that the courts, if need be, are aware of the problems and the challenges that are taking place. It's going to save a lot of heartache down the road. So definitely worthwhile to take advantage of an attorney's services and get them to help you with that.
That's great. Now, if let's say that you make a decision and then you change your mind, but you have your forms that are already completed. But in the moment you're saying, never mind, I am changing my mind. Is that okay? How do you go about making those changes legal?
Yeah, great question. So like every advanced document, including your wills, powers of attorney, advanced care directives, you can absolutely make changes. And it's super important to remember that even if you have those forms filled out, you can change your mind at any time. And as long as you have capacity, the doctors, everybody else, your healthcare power of attorney, whoever it is, should back completely away and say, yep, this is your decision to make. Doesn't matter if those papers are in place or not. It matters that as long as you can make those decisions, everyone should give dignity and respect to that. But if you decide to make changes, it's really rather simple to do. The easiest thing to do is write the word void or revoked, any words to that effect. There's no magic to the words. You can also tear up your advanced planning, you can burn it, but I really think it's a smart choice to just write the word void or revoked on every page, and then in big black magic marker, and then sign it and date it so that people know on January the 15th, 2020, I revoked this, and then take that old document and put it right next to your new document. That way, there's always that thing where somebody will say, well, I appointed Bob to be my agent back in 2000, but then I changed my mind and now I want June to be my agent. Well, if Bob comes forward and says, hey, I'm really upset and angry because I know that I was appointed, well, then you've got the document right there that says it was revoked, and the new document next to it that says now June is the new healthcare power of attorney. So I think it's a really good idea to keep all of those forms in place. Now, the law in Utah is that whatever your most recent form in time is, that's the one that will be respected. But regardless, you want to have those just in case somebody goes to war over it.
Definitely. And like you were saying, it's just so helpful and alleviates a lot of pressure from your family to make those decisions, really hard decisions that sometimes children don't want to make or loved ones don't want to make. So better to be prepared and not put that on them either. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we have a video that we'd like to share. Let me pop that up for just one.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Did the doctors understand that they would listen to the advance directive of a person before they would listen to a power of attorney?
So that's a great question.
And we understand the power of attorneys, but sometimes.
We're going to reopen the rooms. My apologies. I didn't realize that countdown was so quick. Let's go for it again. All right. Back to your rooms.
Okay, sorry. I know we were in the middle of a question there. Alan, you're on mute, but whoever was asking the questions, the last question, go ahead and jump right back in. Sorry about that.
Well, and because the technology may jump us out, Jen, would you mind writing down everybody's email addresses that has requested the slide so I can just get that at the end?
Yes, I've been keeping track of those. So I have also
Okay.
an email.
I mean,
Perfect.
we understand the different kinds of power of attorney, but does the advance directive come first, even depending on the type of power of attorney that the person has, or?
Yeah, that is a fabulous question. There's always this, kind of question of in a scrum, you're going to have a bunch of different people with different voices. Whose voice is the doctor going to actually listen to? So the first point of kind of understanding this is the very first person that should be listened to is the individual themselves. So as long as that individual can make decisions themselves, no power of attorney, no one should be kind of stepping on their toes and making decisions. Then in the absence of that, if there's, let's say, an emergency, if the person has a pulse, then the physician and the individual themselves have made that decision on what should happen in that emergency. So during the course of the emergency, the pulse would govern. Okay, so no advanced healthcare directives would be in place at that point because two physicians have not certified in writing that the person can't make their decisions themselves. So then after the emergency, and once doctors have kind of been able to say, yeah, Alan can no longer make his decisions himself, then whoever it is that I've appointed as my health care power of attorney should be the person who has the authority to make healthcare decisions. And in fact, a regular power of attorney doesn't have any authority to make healthcare decisions on my behalf. So if a person who comes in with a regular power of attorney says, I've been making all of his, financial decisions for years, and so I'm the person in charge here at the hospital. Nope. If that person doesn't also have healthcare power of attorney, then the doctor shouldn't listen to that person at all. So then the question naturally arises, well, what happens if the person has no advanced healthcare directives, no wishes, they haven't even talked to their spouse or anybody else? Well, in practice, what will happen is the doctors typically will listen to the closest family member. And often, unfortunately, that can be the loudest family member. So you have to be really cognizant and cautious if there's someone in your life that is going to step forward and say, hey, I'm in charge. Believe it or not, most doctors will go, oh, okay, well, as long as there's someone in charge, then I'm going to listen to that person. That person may or may not be the person who has your best interests at heart. So keep that in mind and be really thoughtful. This is one of the reasons why filling out this form today is a fabulous thing to do, both for yourself or if you have clients, encourage them to do it. Now, keep in mind, a pulse can't be filled out by the individual themselves. They have to fill that out in conjunction with their physician, a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant. But the advanced healthcare directives, you can fill that out today, and I would encourage people to do that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, because sometimes they'll just, when they have that, the power of attorney is still, they can make decisions with the person. Sometimes they just try to bully themselves around.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's really, I mean, the law is very specific on how this should work. In practice, it doesn't always work that way because doctors are human. And if there's, if nobody else is around to make healthcare decisions, or, sadly, this bothers me a lot too, even if the person is sick in bed and can make their own decisions, sometimes it's easier to talk to a family member rather than the sick individual themselves. Most doctors, I think, are pretty well trained to not listen to a family member as long as the person can make their own decisions. But unfortunately, there's some bullies out there, and that's one of the things that we who are, I think, in this profession have to watch out for a lot is who are those people that are pushing and arrogant and think they can make decisions when the person themselves should be the decision maker.
Okay, I need to personalize that on a little bit. So we found out when my husband died that the only person that could open the grave was the oldest child, the oldest blood child, because none of the rest of us were blood relatives. When I die, if I have an advance directive and she's not on it, it will override her, hopefully.
So that's
Good.
a great question, Faye. When you pass away, all of your advance directives are gone. So there will be no authority once you pass away. Your will take care of all of that. So whoever it is that you direct in your will to be the executor or the person that you're putting in charge, they're sometimes called administrators, sometimes called executors. That's the person that you'll want to give all of those instructions upon your death.
But if
Does
I
that make
don't die,
sense?
but I can't, if I don't die, but I'm, can't do anything,
Mhm.
it will still override her.
Your advanced care directive
Right.
should nominate someone to be your healthcare power of attorney. And then that healthcare power of attorney would have authority to make decisions on your behalf. And if
But she
this
couldn't.
person, if the she that you're talking about is not the person nominated, she should not be able to make any decisions about your health.
That's what I want, because she's going to be the buckle in the road. But I also
And
have a
you know what,
client.
Faye, in your specific instructions on your advanced care directive, I would specifically say, I don't know what her name is. Let's just call her Jane. I don't want Jane making decisions about my health care. I know it seems like kind of a belt and suspenders approach to
That's okay,
actually
she
call
turned it.
that person's name out, but I think it's really important to say, no, that's not what I want. So Faye, if
Well,
that's something you want to do, put that in those special instructions.
got it. Okay. So, but I have a client whose doctor told her before she went into surgery that he would not pay attention to her DNR.
Well, he would be brought up on ethics charges and potentially be, his license could be suspended or revoked. So yeah, I mean, if
All right.
I don't want a surgeon operating on me who doesn't respect my wishes, so maybe I back out of that at that time. But if someone really does say, hey, I'm not respecting this at all. Now, if it was a DNR, the doctor's right, because the DNR no longer functions in the state of Utah. So that doctor should have taken the next step and said, hey, we don't do DNRs anymore, but we do these things called pulses. Does the person have a pulse? Or would the person like me to fill out a pulse with them? That's what a good doctor would do. So just keep in mind that DNR, there are no DNRs in the state of Utah anymore. You have to have a pulse.
PULSE.
POLST.
That's going to be in the notes, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. Because I can take it to her and that will make her feel so much better.
Oh, yeah. It's a great conversation to have with your doctor. I mean, it's really critical at kind of end of life, but anybody who wants to have a conversation with their doctor about this, the doctor should say, yeah, let's have because it can be reimbursed by Medicare. I mean, it's a great thing to do. Just have that conversation.
Okay. Wonderful. You answered both questions perfectly. Thank you. All I need now are the notes, so I have it in writing.
You bet. We'll send those to you.
Thank you.
You bet.
I would definitely ask also, what are kind of some of the life-changing events that you might have where you're like, you know what, I might want to update all of these forms to make sure that people who I don't want involved in my healthcare are excluded.
Yeah, well, I suddenly came up with AFib and a couple of, they've disconnected my top and bottom of the heart. So yeah, I'm going to go right out and do that right today.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I get the notes.
Good for you. Well, some of those other life-changing events would be, if I would say you want to probably review these every 5 to 7 years anyway. But if the person you selected as your healthcare power of attorney. Say they pass away or they get very sick, then you're going to want to make changes to that.
I'm
If
sorry,
your health,
would it matter if he's out of state?
it does not matter. No,
Okay,
they'll
that-
honor that. But it is
that-
trickier. It's more complicated to have your person be out of state. So any other life-changing events can be things like getting married, you know, a child that you trusted passes away, you know, your own healthcare situation has changed dramatically. Those are all situations where you would want to review this, and your doctor is a great place to start.
That's great. Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Alan? Going to try and see if now I can share my screen.
Oh, I think I have to probably stop sharing, don't I? Oh, I did stop sharing.
You stopped,
Let
okay.
me just say thank you to everybody who attended this session, and let you know that if you are interested in asking me any other questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer it. My email is in the chat, but I'll share it with you right now. It's just Ormsby, ORMSBY, @aarp.org. More than happy to try and share any information. I can't represent you, obviously. I can't answer very specific legal questions that apply only to you, but I'm more than happy to answer general questions. So thanks, Jen.
Yes, let me pop this in and let's see if it works for me. Okay, here we go.
Thank you for taking time to attend the Elder Abuse Conference. I appreciate your support and dedication to addressing this critical public health issue. Older adults often blame themselves when abuse occurs, resulting in shame and silence, which makes your awareness and involvement all the more important. If you have reason to believe that an older adult has been the subject of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, please contact Adult Protective Services at 1-800-371-7897 or contact the nearest law enforcement agency. It's imperative that we all work together to increase awareness and reduce mistreatment of vulnerable Utahns.
Okay, well, thank you everybody so much. We have the emails of everybody who requested slides, and I've copied those and I'll send those to Alan. As he mentioned, his email is in the chat. If you have any questions, please just let us know. And thank you for joining us today.
Do you have my email?
Let me pop
I didn't specifically request, I don't think. So,
If you can put it in the chat just to be safe, that would be helpful.
okay, I can try.
That would be great. If not, you can just let me know and I can try typing it in too.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And then I think I see Susan K. Harris says request copies, but if you can put your email address there in the chat where you put that request, that will be helpful just so I have it spelled correctly and ready to send out to everyone.
Go on. Chat right there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
If you just move your arrow to the bottom of the screen, there's an option for chat. Just click on that. The chat box will pop up on the side. And if you don't have any other questions, or if you've sent in your email request, you can just check the option to leave the room and you'll be able to get on out. Thank you guys so much.